to the Rants Live.
Welcome. Hey, we did it. A little scramble there to get everything set up, but we made it happen because we're committed. Well, at least
or should
bit.
Be. I guess depending on depending
sure.
on whether that's committed to this or we should just be in an institution somewhere. I guess either way.
That would probably be best for everyone.
Yeah, everyone, especially after I've spent the last 20 hours or so, 22 hours bitching about the bunt last night and arguing with people on that. So I'm ready for the Cubs to play another game so I can just stop talking about it. But
what was your
I hated it.
What was the argument?
So like bunting is like I'm definitely team buck funting, right? I'm not a big 100%. Fan of the bunt. Right?
Hate it when my kid even tries it.
Yeah, so I get it if you are at a low level of play and the other team absolutely has no idea what bunt coverage should be, and you have a kid that can lay one down, it's a guaranteed hit, right? Hey, if we're bunting for a hit, totally get it. And it's funny because the thing is, what we had last night, there was nobody who was like, It was either that was the right play, right? That's the argument, or that was dumb. Now, in a vacuum, right? If we're talking about if the Cubs are the home team and you can put two men in scoring position with only one out and a run wins the game, totally get it. They were down a run, however, and the Mets had Francisco Alvarez, Francisco Lindor, and Pete Alonso coming up. So just tying the game, not what you want to play for. Right now I get two runners in scoring position, but here's my thing. Again, in a vacuum, I understand that. And why you would want to advance those runners. But you already had one man in scoring position with no outs, right? It's the play didn't happen in a vacuum. And this is what I don't like about it. You pinch hit for your catcher with Nick Madrigal, who, fine. But then David Ross admitted afterwards that he hits the ball on the ground a lot, so you're worried about a double play. If you're just going to bunt with him, why are you pinch hitting? Is he that much better a bunter? Right, in that situation, which I don't like. He does hit the ball on the ground a lot. However, he has not grounded into a double play at all since he's come back up, which is not saying a ton. We're only talking about 100. That was his 110th, but 109 plate appearances prior. But he's a contact hitter. You want him on there. Put on a hit and run. You can advance the runners that way, and maybe the ball sneaks through. Maybe something happens. Maybe a run scores if he actually singles. Or you should have left Amaya in. Or if you were going to pinch hit for Amaya, pinch hit with Yan Gomes. And let that happen. But that's one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is you're giving up a guaranteed out ahead of a very high strikeout hitter, right? Chris Morel strikes out a third of the time under normal circumstances. In high leverage situations, he strikes out over 40% of the time. So now you put yourself in a situation. I love it. And people are like, well, he should just shorten up the stroke and put the ball in play. And it's like, that's not who Chris Morel is. Well, he's a professional hitter. Yes. Okay, cool. You're a professional at whatever your job is. But if somebody comes to you today and is like, John, the administrative assistant for so-and-so is out. We need you to go be an admin for the day.
You'd be like,
simple enough. You would absolutely drown in that because you wouldn't know. You don't have the tools for that to just be put into it right away. So again, was it bad? Absolutely. Was it bad that he just stared down a dick ball for strike three? That wasn't great at all. But if you look at it, right, and part of the reason bunting has fallen out of favor by and large, and these numbers are in the piece I wrote today, first and second, no outs, your run expectancy for that inning is 1.5 runs. Okay? Second and third, sounds like a better situation. With one out, your run expectancy has dropped to 1.4 runs. Now, that's not a big difference, but it is still a drop. You have lowered your run expectancy. So people are like, oh, it's a better situation. No, in point of fact, it is not a better situation to have runners on second and third with one out, especially knowing who was up next. Plus, as we saw, it opened up first base. Bickford threw around Nico Horner very clearly. He was a little wild anyway, but they were trying to get Horner to chase. They were willing to put him on at that point, right? Another contact hitter. So they didn't let him hurt them. And then Ian Happ, he struck out too. So you put yourself in a situation to where you have now lost the advantage, and it slipped away very quickly. As soon as you go to the 2-out situation, 2 out, second and third, Boom, run expectancy 0.6 runs. Even bases loaded goes up to 0.77. So you have quite literally halved your run expectancy in that situation based on where that first part goes. So again, people they're thinking of a bygone day of baseball, a bygone era where having a runner in scoring position, having a couple, choking up, shooting it the other way, whatever. That's great, man. That's really cool, and that sounds so easy. But this is not the 1970s.
You got
It's a
to,
different style of
but if
baseball.
you're going to try that, you got to get some runs across the plate.
Right. Like you have
That was
to,
a failure.
You have to know the personnel in that situation. The other thing that's funny, and this is what, like, I am putting this on Ross, but part of what I have a problem with is he talked about, oh, you got a guy in Morel who hit a homer earlier. Yeah, dude, he hit a homer. You know what you don't need to have to score on a home run? Runners in scoring position. The guy on first scores anyway. So does the guy at home. They don't need to be at third base to score on a home freaking run. But again, he strikes out a lot. So putting that automatic out in front of another very high probability, like Morel's going to be out 75% of the time anyway, period. But the idea of a strikeout means that a majority of the time, a whole bunch of the
Definitely
outs
not
he
scoring.
creates,
Yeah.
right. A whole bunch of the outs he creates are not going to be productive. That's who he is. And so knowing that he was up, knowing the personnel, the other problem I have is Ross is like, you got to trust your guys. Oh, really? You got to trust your guys, Rossi? You pitch hit for someone who you didn't think could get a hit or get a bunt down.
Not, you've got to manage your guys.
Right.
Is what I would
don't tell me
say.
You trust him and then literally make a move that shows you didn't trust him to get the job done. I just, again, different situation, right? If it were coming around to where, Horner was the one who was up after Madrigal, I would get that because I would expect Nico Horner to put the ball in play. But situationally, based on the personnel he had and the choices that he made, I don't feel like that was even close to the right call. And again, everybody's like, well, if they had done this, what if Madrigal had hit into a double play? Okay, but he fucking hit the ball. You put yourself in a position to try to win. You didn't give them an automatic out. They had to make a play. What if that bunt is popped up right to, who was it? Mendick, I think, who was coming in from third. What if that's popped up to him and he can fire back and back pick the guy there? What if the bunt is right back to the pitcher and he can get a double play? That stuff's still in play. You don't eliminate a double play by bunting, right? There's a possibility of it. There's so many things. It's like, no, I'm not looking at this retroactively. I'm looking at it, and we can talk about bias and all that, and that's what, outcome bias. Ross talked about that. No, I'm looking at the run expectancy. You cost yourself chances.
And like that was a real frustrating way to end a series where the Cubs scored a total of with 6 runs. Eight runs. It's like 2, 3, and 3. Where they had just been piling on the runs prior to that, and so suddenly they go up against a New York Mets team whose pitching is 27th in baseball. And they suddenly can't score runs. And for some reason, they can't figure out how to not throw the ball down the middle of the plate to Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
For God's sakes. I mean, it's not like he had maybe there was one home run that was like a good job on his half, actually hitting a somewhat difficult pitch. But man, just too many mistakes in the middle of the plate by the Cubs against Pete Alonso. And it's just kind of after the first game where he hit 2 home runs, I guess that wasn't enough.
Yeah. Let's just keep pitching this dude. Hey,
walk him.
And Hendricks pitched around him, I think, the first time last night, but the second time he gets a home run. And then the third time he came up, he had to pitch to him because he had bases loaded, or whatever.
That
maybe
worked out well. He just missed that too, by the way.
Oh, yeah. And
he just missed. That was a terrible pitch, and he just missed it.
Yeah, my butthole was puckered that whole time because I was like, "This is not going to be good." And again, thankfully he got away from that, and he would have been up. That's my thing. He would have been up again in the bottom of the 9th if the Cubs had managed to tie it. So it's like you really gotta. It just as good as they looked those last 2 games against the Braves. And you felt really good about the win in the middle game, held on to one. but they just, the first game, the second game, not only was there, pitching to Alonso, but just the offense wasn't clicking, outside of, say, a Suzuki last night. I mean, geez, talk about that dude coming back with a bang, right? But, and that's what they needed, because Cody Bellinger hasn't, man, he sucks all of a sudden. No, I'm kidding about that, of course, but, he can't carry the team every time. But it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. A lot of people are like, oh, how can you not have Talkman in there? I'm like, well, Suzuki's got to play, and he did fairly well. And then Talk came in and he drew a couple walks. It was fine, but they made the Mets look like a decent team. You know what I mean?
They did. They did a real good job of that.
Which is
they should have won the game last night. They really were in position to win it. And so kind of no excuse there. No excuse there. And so, all right, well, you chalk it up as just a crappy series, right? Coming off, probably a pretty big high. It's not surprising to see kind of them trip, and lose a little bit of momentum. But a day off to kind of regroup. And then they head to Toronto, which, maybe they'll sweep Toronto, who knows? But the way they're playing, like cold and hot, but definitely what appears to be the most challenging series coming up. One thing that I wanted to touch on, though, was just Hayden Wesneski is just, oof. I mean, like, when does that experiment end? He's been terrible. And it's just like, man, he just leaves balls just hanging right in the middle of the plate, like too frequently. Just he's getting hammered. You know what?
It's funny how, right? So in the space of a year, he went from it, because, and we heard about it on this show. We were doing a trade deadline show last year, and we're shocked by the news that Scott Efros has been traded to the Yankees. Got this Hayden Wesneski guy. Nobody really knew about him. Then you start digging into it. It's like, okay, well, this looks like it could work out pretty well. He comes up, phenomenal debut, looks awesome. Everybody's like, whoa, what a steal the Cubs got for a middle relief guy. And now it's come back around to like, now granted, Scotty blew out his elbow, and but now it's like, damn, it would be really nice to have a very solid middle reliever. And what the hell is this Wesneski dude doing out there? Right, like
he's throwing some home run. 21% home run to fly ball ratio.
It's not good, dude.
21% of the time he gives up a fly ball, it's a home run.
Yeah, that's not a good good ratio. It's not. And it's just,
oh my gosh, it's one in every 5 times.
Said, not like it. There are times when you can see a dude like you mentioned about Alonso or whatever, right? There's times when I forget who it was. There was one, I think it was it Tyone, maybe it was even Smiley, and we can I want to touch on him a little bit too. But the ball was like 6 inches, 8 inches up out of the zone high, and the dude clubs it for a home run. It's like, there's certain times you just got to like, but that's not Wesneski. That's not what he's doing. He's just pumping them right down the middle and just giving up hit after. They're not even competitive a lot of times, and that's what
they're really not. They're like BP.
Yeah, because when he came up, and I don't know if I feel like he's a really cerebral dude, right? I know he's very nerdy with his pitching, and he's talking about seam shifted wake on his slider, and I wonder if he's a guy who the closest I can come is like Jason Hayward's swing. Like Hayward would always tinker with it, so like even if it was working, he could never get any consistency because he was always kind of changing little things and I think overthinking it. And I just wonder if that's going on with Wesneski, similar to maybe, or maybe a better comp would be, say, a Suzuki, right? Who kind of overthinks things and gets too much in his head and just has to step back from it. I do wonder if Wesneski's doing that, and as a result has just hurt himself because he's pitching too much with his brain and not enough with his arm, if that makes sense, and just letting things happen. Because it's
and they sent him back down to Iowa.
Right.
And it just didn't seem to fix anything.
Yeah. So I don't know. Something's, like I said, I think it's something mental that is manifesting itself physically. That's the only thing I can think. Right. I mean, because at the end, obviously he's got to throw the pitches physically, but it's not working, and I mean, he was just getting rocked last night. Like it was, and I got a text from you, and he was just like, dude, what the hell's going on with this guy? I'm paraphrasing. It wasn't quite that, but it's like, and And he is a guy who I feel like the only other person I've seen who was this way to this extent was Carl Edwards Jr., where you knew basically like within 2 pitches, you were like, okay, we know what Carl's going to be tonight.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be bad Carl or good Carl. And if it's like ball 1, ball 2 to start, he was walking the dude and it was going to be a really bad inning. But hey, first pitch strike, had the curveball working. Cool. We got it. Wesneski, I feel like, man, you know, when dude comes out there and he starts giving up contact, like, nope, get him out. Like, pull him now.
It just seems like
he's got to be out there for
most of the time he comes in within the first like batter or 2, it's a home run.
Yeah, that's not good. It's less than ideal.
It is very less than ideal. And
especially when he was expected to fill a role, right? Like he was coming in to be kind of that long, you know, Assad moved into the starting spot that was vacated when Stroman went on the IL. And there was thought that it could have been Wesneski, but either way, it's either he was supposed to be a starter or the long man, which is the role Assad had. And that became even more apparent when it's clear that Drew Smyly cannot hold down a spot in the rotation. But now where do you turn?
He's a wreck too.
Dude. So this is what I want to hit on, right? So this is a very just bourbon. So I picked up a bottle of Maker's Mark because it was on sale for $23, which is nice. And so I did add a little bitters and there's some cherries in there. So it's not really an old fashioned, but it kind of gives that off. But anyway, so here's the thing with Smyly, right? He's been awful, clearly. But beyond that, and I had hinted that this was probably going to happen, and obviously it's performance based for now, and the fact that they've got 3 days off out of the next 8, like they have today off, they're off Monday and they're off next Thursday. So in the span of 8 days, they have 3 days off, which is wild to me, right? It's like they were in London, dude. Like, how do they have this? How did they play this many games in a row? Now they have 3 days off in a week. But here's the thing with Smyly. So he signed a 2-year, $19.5 million guaranteed, $19 million guaranteed contract prior to this season, right? So he's got another year. This year he's at $8 million. Next year his guarantee is 8.5, and then there's a $10 million mutual option on which there's a $2.5 million buyout. That mutual option won't be exercised. We don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
But the 2.5 is there. Now, here's the real problem, right? Here's the conundrum that he has placed or the Cubs have put themselves in. He didn't put them there, but the Cubs have painted themselves into this because his contract calls for annual incentives. So here's I'll run these down. $250,000 at 110 innings, another $250K at 120 innings, $750,000 at 130 and 140, and then $1 million if he hits 150. So that's $3 million. He's at 117 innings now, so he's already earned $250,000 in bonuses. Another 2.2 innings, right? He'll be at another $250,000. Now, not only does he get those bonuses this season, he's also eligible for them next year. But the big thing is his salary for next year, his guaranteed salary for next year and his option year go up by that same amount each time he hits one of those. So if he was to remain in the starting rotation and he makes another, say, 8 starts over the season, which is about what he would be in line to do, and he averages 4 innings a start, that's 32 innings. That puts him over 150, right? Or right at 150. That means that they would have paid him not $8 million this year, but $11 million this year. And it means that next year his 8.5 jumps to 11.5 with the remaining potential for him to earn another $3 million should he hit those innings thresholds next year. And that's what makes it very difficult, because as he starts hitting them, let's say everybody's DFA him. Okay, well, that's probably not going to happen now, right? Even if it happens at the end of the season and he manages to make it to, let's say he doesn't get 150, let's say he gets to 140. So he's, there's $2 million they owed him there. They would still be on the hook for his $8.5 million next year, the $2.5 million extra, so that's $11 million, and the $2.5 million buyout. So they have $13.5 million in dead money if they cut him. That's more than they just did on Trey Mancini. Like,
what a disaster.
I didn't like the deal at the time. I was okay with it, but I'm thinking like, I think, what was his option? It was like $8 million or $10 million. I'm like, I figured they'd be able to get him for like a two-year, like $12 million extension. Like, hey, dude, we're pushing you out for 2 years. we're upping your guarantee. You were going to make 10 if you got the option. We'll give you 12. It's cool. But instead, it's a minimum 19.5. But right now, it's actually already jumped to 20 because he earned a $250,000 bonus, and that bumps his salary next year by the same amount. So now he's at a $20 million guarantee minimum. If he never pitches again for them, they're still going to owe him that. And he is going to pitch more. I guarantee he'll pitch another 10 to 20 to 30 innings. But it just, that would not be a big deal if he was pitching like he did at the beginning of the season, but he has been awful.
Yeah.
Truly terrible. Like, I don't like seeing him out there. He has given up. I looked at this. I think his last 6 outings, he has given up a run in his first inning of work. And that includes the 2 because he came in, he had an opener for 2 of those, the back-to-back appearances he made against the Cardinals a couple weeks back. So he was not the starter, but he was the bulk guy. But he still gave up a run, not in the first inning, but in his first inning. So in his first inning of work, he's given up a run, I believe, in 6 of those. And I think 5 of them, if I recall, I wrote this like earlier in the week or last week or whatever. It was earlier this week, I think. But 5 of those 6 have included a home run. So he is giving up immediate runs, immediate homers right out of the gate every time. And it's just, that is not survivable. And it's even worse if you're coming out of the bullpen. At least if you're a starter and maybe you give up an early run, you can kind of back away from that over the next 3 to 4 to 5 innings. Dude, if you're in a relief role, like, dude, would you trust that guy to come, like him and Wesneski right now to be your long relievers? Are you kidding me? I hate it. I hate it so much. But I feel like this is actually like their way of saying this is like the phantom IL stint. Like, oh, he'll be in the bullpen. But with all these days off and with everything else, they can easily patch over that. Like, oh, just matchup's not good for you, Drew. Just go ahead and see and clear your head.
What a disaster. It's just like who on the Cubs side negotiates these contracts? My goodness. I mean, like, why are you, I mean, the money that they paid Smiley and Mancini, I mean, you could have combined that into like a much better player. It's just it's baffling to see, like, they're just throwing money away, and there's no way Ricketts is happy with this.
Yeah, that's one of the things where I do feel like I give him all the credit in the world for Dansby Swanson. That's clearly worked out quite well, and I think we'll continue to. The Bellinger deal, awesome. Like, those were great. But all the little fringy moves they made, right? Like, those were,
they tried to get too cute.
Yeah, that is exactly. It was like, let's hope this can continue. You know, let's hope Mancini does better. And the fact that they kept running that dude out there at first base, we talked about this last one, so I don't want to belabor that, but the fact that they ran him out there and you know, it felt like they were trying to up his value before the deadline. It didn't, and then he's gone. You know what I mean? It's like, what were you guys even thinking? But yeah, and Smiley, and again, I would get it. Like, the Smiley thing would make more sense if it was a 1-year deal with the option on the second. But a 2-year deal at that kind of guarantee, you're going to
that compounds like that.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like, okay, the deal is one thing.
Did anyone read that?
Yeah, and it's like, just to hit those levels, like, I do understand, because he is a guy who's been injured a lot in the past and he hasn't frequently racked up innings.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you're talking about him potentially earning another $6 million over 2 years, which, right, not a lot, but if we're talking about a Cubs team that right now is within about $6 million of the CBT threshold for this year, and should compete pretty heavily for free agents next year. I know they've got like $82 million under the threshold for next year, but adding, right, not only, and let's say they keep him, right? Let's say he does pitch next year in a starting role again. You're adding that $3 million to his salary and the potential to earn $3. So that's $6 million. Now, is that big a deal against, you know, what is it? The 200 and what's the next year? 235, 237, whatever it is, the cap. But anyway, $6 million is a small percentage of that, but that's like the salary for some dudes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, you're adding a whole,
could be the salary for Smiley if the Cubs are smart.
Yeah, which is like he's set up to. He's only supposed to make $8.5 million next year. So if you bump that by 6, potentially, like you're almost doubling his salary for poor performance. And that's the part. Like we're not, we don't want to pay for past. You don't want to pay for past performance, and you certainly don't want to pay for past bad performance. So they need to figure something out because one way or the other, they need him and Stroman have both been brutal since the end of May. We're talking 2 months of bad pitching from two of the dudes who at the beginning of the season were carrying you, helping to. Steele's been good the whole time. But now it's like Justin Steele, and then, Hendricks when he's on is fine. But you can't have that. If you had early season, Steele, Stroman, Smiley, hell yeah, dude. And then Hendricks is your fourth, you're looking great for a playoff series. Right now, it's Steele and a bunch of question marks. And that's not. It's not.
Tyan's been pitching well, though.
Yeah, Tyan's been great. Yeah,
he's been really good.
Change him. Yeah, I dig it. Like he's made some quantifiable changes with the way he's pitching, the mix and things like that. But he's made some little changes with his mechanics. He's mentally kind of made some adjustments. I love how, and that gives me faith. He's done that with a lot of, with the help of Tommy Hotovy and the staff. It would be really, really great if they can work with these guys and get the same things. Hopefully Stroman's hip gets right, and that's maybe what was part of the problem. That gets cleared up. Fine there. Cool. That stuff can change. You guys are veterans, and I think that's a part of it. We've seen, we saw Michael Fulmer come back and do a lot better. We've seen Julian Merriweather look a lot better. After kind of initially having some terrible trouble with control. And so these things can change. It's just that right now, like you can't afford, when going through a soft part of the schedule, you can't have all of your pitchers shitting the bed and costing you wins when you need to gain ground right now in the division. Like this is what
the fortunate thing is that the teams they're chasing, you just feel like it's inevitable for the Cubs to catch them. It's there's no one. It's Milwaukee, right? For Cincinnati to continue at the pace that they were at, I'd be really surprised. I think it's happening right now. They're already struggling. So it's really Milwaukee, right? And honestly, at the end of the month, if the Cubs aren't ahead of Milwaukee, I'll be surprised, disappointed, a bunch of different things, because they go from here after they play the Blue Jays. They play 2 against the Sox in Chicago at Wrigley, 3 against the Royals, 3 against the Tigers, 4 against the Pirates.
Yeah.
Those, that should be like maybe 2 losses.
They should be. Speaking of the Tigers, did you see that the pitch that Javi swung at today? I wrote a whole piece about it. But, dude, it was like, oh my God.
What is he doing?
I don't know.
Does he not see?
Like the thing is, first of all, that pitch was never a strike, right? It's not like it was one of those wicked sliders that starts over and just breaks. No, it started out and went further out, but the catcher was set up there the whole time.
It's like his vision is gone.
He didn't set up here and then move to go get the pitch. The dude literally moved 2 feet over to his right and had his glove a foot outside. The ball hit exactly where he was targeted. He didn't have to move his leg. Because you see that sometimes, right? Where a catcher's got to like, holy crap, that thing really moved. And he's got to jump over there and go get it. No, it's like, is your peripheral vision that bad that you can't see this dude moving all the way over there? And I was just, and then later he took one like a Chris Morrell, just a dead fastball down the middle. And I don't know if it's Detroit, if it's the atmosphere, if it's the team, if it's the whatever other.
I'm sure that has something to do with it.
But dude, he has been the only thing. His WRC plus is like 60. His ISO, right? And Javi's always had a ton of power. His ISO is 100. And just to put that in perspective, since coming back from Iowa from his demotion, Nick Madrigal's at like 102, 103. Yeah. So Javi he is less of a power hitter than Nick Madrigal. Just let that mirror.
That's so baffling to think about. It's like, and so how old is Javi? Like 32, 33?
He's in there, I guess. I got his Fangraphs page pulled up. I should know that. But
is he a free agent? I feel like after this year?
He's 30. He's only 30. Yeah.
Wow.
No, he's not a 6-year deal. He's under that contract till 27. He can opt out after this year, though.
That ain't happening.
Which is not going to happen because he's at a $23.3 million AAV, dude. He is not opting out of that.
No.
I don't know whether and what kind of no trade protections, if it's one of those deals, and what I could see, or I'm sure whether he's got no trade, he may have some protections. I'm sure he'd be willing to help facilitate his immediate departure from Detroit, or not immediate, but as soon as possible once free agency actually opens up and the trades can open up again.
Salary though.
Oh, I'm sure they would, but at this point, he's only a positive WAR player because his defense is still really strong. He is a negative value offensive player right now. But I have to think some team, because I was even advocating for it like last year if the Cubs would have been able to figure something out because they had problems at third base, right? Wisdom was playing terrible defense last year. It was like, hey, if they'll eat a bunch of this, you can figure it out, and he's cool with taking third base. All right, figure something like that out. I could see a team somewhere else taking a chance on that, and him maybe trying to. I just think he's got to be. Maybe this is totally wrong, but like we saw how bad he was in 2020 when there were fans in the stands, and he talked about that. It was a weird deal for him. I think he's just got to be in Detroit. Like what? Like I don't think he'd be any good in Cleveland. You know what I mean? Like get him to San Diego or LA or New York or something. I think he might be a little bit better. He'd thrive off the energy, good or bad. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, or get eaten alive.
Well, that too. I mean, and that
fans.
you remember he did the thumbs down thing when he was with the Mets, and they were doing that thumbs down thing, and the fans all got really shitty with them and whatever. But he just has not been the same dude, right, since he left the Cubs, and I think that's it's unfortunate. I mean, I'm not calling him a flash in the pan. That's not right at all. But he's kind of like you ever lit phosphorus on fire? Is it phosphorus? Or magnesium? Magnesium. You ever lit magnesium? You get little magnesium, like did it in chemistry
where
class.
It just sparks.
Yeah, it just burns super, super bright and hot, and then and it's like you get burns your eye. You're like, oh, you get the eye, flares going, and then it's gone, right? And I wonder how much of that is, he's such an emotional player. He feeds off that. I feel like Wilson Contreras is very similar to where. If you're not in the right situation, or maybe a better, just whatever chemical reaction, right? You need a reagent. You need something to spark that. And if it's not there, then it's just not going to fly. So
it's definitely not there.
I'm real upset about it, whatever. But
it's such a waste. It's such a waste because he was such an exciting player there for a few years. And it's just like, to see him continue to swing at these pitches. I mean, it's just like, it's baffling to think that he can't figure that out.
But, and here's the wildest part about it. You want to know the craziest part about seeing a swing like that and seeing what he's done. And this isn't the first time we've seen it. You want to know what his strikeout rate is this year? What have you, if you haven't cheated, look at what I wrote.
4%.
Do you know what his career average is? First of all, I'll tell you, his career average is 28% flat. So what do you think his strikeout?
Career strikeout? That's terrible.
28%. But what do you think it is this year? So if it's,
I haven't been watching him, so I don't know, but I'd guess it was probably in the same range.
22.7, lowest of his career. His overall strikeout rate this year is the lowest of his career. The best he's ever had, 22.7. But his ISO is only 100. And I wonder if he's Suzukiing it, right? Like we saw there, where he knows it's so bad that then he's second guessing himself. And as a result, he's waiting, and he has no power. Because that was the thing before. It's like, dude's going to strike out 35% of the time, but hell, he's going to hit 35 homers that are going to leave you just amazed, And it's like, dude, if you're going to suck, at least have something redeeming offensively. And that's just not there for him. And he's not reaching base enough to steal it. So anyway, like I said, I feel kind of bad, but at the same time, I'm like, I mean, you got paid, dude. So if I was doing that poor a job, relatively speaking, at my job, I wouldn't be getting paid. So
exactly,
I sure as shit wouldn't be making $23 million. So to that extent, I don't feel that bad. But at the same time, I'm like, man, it sucks to see it because it just feels like the energy's gone, and that whole vibe that he had was just not there. So that sucks.
Does suck. Well, the Cubs, like I said, they go to play Toronto. Looks like we've got Assad, Steele, and Tyon going over the weekend, and yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good about that. I think Assad's been good, Steele's good, Tyon's good, so you have to feel pretty good as long as the Cubs can produce some runs and get out of this little bit of a funk that they're in. It's not terrible, but as long as Alonso doesn't somehow get traded to the Blue Jays or show up in a Blue Jay.
Lest you've forgotten, the Blue Jays have quite a few mashers on their team, and that's the thing is like the Mets had one dude, like they got one guy who could beat you right now. Just don't throw to that,
and he did.
At least, I mean, and the guys like, look, Alvarez is a pretty good hitter, Lindor clearly a good hitter, but there's nobody after Alonso that they needed to be afraid of based on what they have been doing certainly lately, and the Jays are not quite that, but maybe they just don't have anybody who's on a heater like that, because Alonso, everything he was touching was going out. But I just, man, or if they do give up some homers, maybe they could score more than 2 or 3 runs a game. That would be ideal.
Yeah. 4 or 5, that would be cool.
12.
So maybe get back in that. Yeah, 12 would be good. Maybe get back in that rhythm of, I mean, at least they didn't get shut out. So, I'm happy for that. And they had, 2 1-run games. They won one of them. They should have won. Honestly, they should have taken 2 out of 3 from the Mets. They really, really were in position to win last night. That didn't happen. There's nothing to feel bad about. The only thing is getting Stroman back, and like the Stroman from the first half would be huge, because if you look at the lineup in the order, you've got Stroman, you've got Steele, Hendricks, Tyon. I mean, those are 4 solid pitchers that you can feel pretty good about. That 5th spot is a mess.
Yes.
Dude, whatever.
I mean, At this point, I'd say, hey, Drew, you're gonna stay in the bullpen. We're never gonna pitch you, unless it's if the game is 6 runs one way or the other, then you can come in, because we do not want you earning another $5.5 million.
Yeah,
and we're gonna let Assad take those bulk innings. I mean, I'm not advocating for this, because I'm definitely pro player when it comes to, dude, earn your money. They gave you that contract. Go earn the most from that damn thing that you can. I don't care how bad you suck.
Yep.
But if I am the front office, I'm sitting there looking at Rossi and be like, hey, buddy, he doesn't get to 150 innings. I don't care what you've got to do. He is not getting there, because that's the key. Like, if it still would not be great. Like, he still gets $2 million in bonuses and an extra $2 million on his next year's salary if he gets to 140. But that 150, he hits that's an extra $2 million. And so I gotta think they're sitting there. It's like, hey man, you're gonna get like 1 inning, and if that doesn't look good, you're done.
I'm starting to get a little concerned about the Cubs pitching development. I mean, like, for example, what on earth happened to Keegan Thompson?
Ooh,
holy mother. I'm looking at his stats in AAA. Have you looked?
It's awful. I know he came back with and he was kind of on
a 12 ERA.
Yeah. And I think he pitched, was it last night? He came back and kind of had another game back, but like, again, that's a dude where, and here was the thing with him, and you could see it coming, right? Because he got demoted, he had a pretty good ERA, and everybody's like, oh, how could you? It's like, no, man, like, he is due for some serious bad correction, because it was just not, the walks were bad. He wasn't striking guys out, and I don't know if that just ruined his confidence or what, but man, that did not do well for him, and I really, really hope he can battle back from that. But there are a lot of dudes, man, who, we talked about, again, Wesneski tinkering a little bit. Tyon tinkered with some stuff, and they were trying to work on that sweeper a lot more, and they really had to dig in on some stuff and figured, like, sometimes, dude, just back the heck off and just let shit work. Like, I get it, but if it ain't broke, let's not keep trying to fix it, but we'll see. I mean, I know they've made other changes developmentally. You know, we just saw him. Ryan Jensen just left the organization. He got picked up on waivers by the Mariners, and that's a 27th overall pick a few years ago. Last in 2019, the last draft over which Jason McLeod presided as, you know, the kind of the development scouting director. And then he moved on to a different role in the organization after that, and then left entirely another year later, but or 2 years later. But it's pretty clear, right? If you look at they traded DJ Hers out of the 2019 draft class. They just straight up waived Ryan Jensen and let him walk, dude. Like, he was on the 40-man. They were like, we'd rather have the 40-man spot than have you continuing in the organization. And I think that tells you how currently the regime feels about the 2019 and prior dudes who were part of that McLeod regime. So interesting stuff. But that 2019 draft is rough. I mean, it is rough. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, let's see what happens this weekend. We'll circle back at some point next week and figure it all out. I am predicting that the Cubs will be in first place by next weekend.
I'm not that bullish on it. That's just because I don't think they do well in Toronto. But I'll give them 2 weeks. I say 2 weeks. That's
the end of the month.
By the time the Brewers come to Wrigley, the 28th through the 30th, which would be the end of the month, the Cubs will be in first place at that point. And not by so that series could still swing it, right? But I think the Cubs will be ahead of the Brewers by the time the Brewers come to Chicago.
I love that. God, either way, that series is going to be great. But yeah,
it's gonna be fun. I'm gonna try to get up there for the first of those games. We'll see.
Nice. All right. Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. It's been good as always. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Cool. See you.